All right, it's a bit longer than I would have liked. And you know, I don't like reading, so I'll just do my best with what I can. But I'm so grateful to all of you for joining me tonight. And for the part 2 of the Broken Boy's story. And this is actually his dream. But there's going to be a bit of story attached to this too, because it just all needs explaining. So we had a WhatsApp conversation, which I've shortened, on the 12th of December, 2017. He wrote to me, "Hello, Mom. I've got a small favor to ask you. I'm struggling with depression again, and anger, and I'm sitting with the church counselor, Sister M. I had repressed my childhood to such an extent that I've chosen to completely forget it. I see pictures of me when I was 16 and younger, and up till 20. I don't even know who that person is. Anyway, she reckons that my inner child is angry and I need to ask the people that I know who can remember me to tell me who little me was. So I was hoping you might remember some things and you could send me a mail or something if you're not too busy. The good and the bad. I've forgiven my dad for what he's done and we've had our chat, but I still can't remember anything from my childhood. We actually get along really well now. Well, understandably, I would hope that for those who were able to listen to part 1 of the Broken Boy's story, and I'm going to continue calling him the Broken Boy because he's never had enough inner child work done yet. You know why the getting along really well with his dad didn't last. And I'm interested to know how he came to forgive his dad in the first place, if he couldn't even remember his childhood as a result of the horrors that that monster had inflicted on him. Whose idea was it for him to forgive his dad at the time? What pressures might have been placed on him to do so? It should never have been expected of him, and this is something I feel very strongly about. In response to his request, I wrote, I only remember you as a good boy, but you were also a very frightened child. Your father was very cruel to you. I trust that your therapist will be able to help you. And that you will be strong enough to face your past in order to fully realize the extent of what you suffered and what your trapped inner child self is still dealing with today, so that you can help yourself best on your healing journey. Only you can help yourself. Nobody else can. It's hard work, but it's such important work and worth every bit of effort you put in. He responded, funny, my mom also says I was good, but I only remember being rebellious and naughty, never good. I still think that it's easier to forget than reminisce. That's my problem. My brain doesn't want to remember and tells me it's okay if I never remember. But everyone tells me it's not okay, and I don't see why it isn't. I don't even remember being frightened. My therapist says that my problem is that I'm too good at this repression thing, and it's a defensive mechanism. I can't even remember my bad marriage, not one thing. I remember I stayed by you. I can't remember anything else. Crying face emoticon. I remember I liked staying by you. That's just a feeling. But my character, I don't recall my mannerisms. If I was funny or bratty, what I liked or didn't like, those kind of things. When I spoke to the Broken Boy about the importance of inner child work, he responded, I just don't feel anyone in me. It's like this life is my problem now and not his anymore. There's no one talking to me from in there. So I have to find him. I have to learn what he was or spark a memory. Right now it's just an empty shelf, and try as I can, I still can't fill it. So when you say my inner child is experiencing pain, which my therapist also says, I search myself and find a blank. It's very hard to explain. Okay, so keep in mind that in part 1, on the Broken Boy's story, he did say that he feels, and this is recently, that he feels that maybe he can't detect his inner child because he's still living in that part of himself and has not yet found his way to his adult self. So I responded to what he said before. You were more than likely too afraid as a child to use your voice or to express your emotions to your abuser. So you trapped all your anger, frustration, and pain inside. I imagine that your abuser beat and shoved all your anger back inside of you if you so much as dare to even look at him sideways. Once you're able to recognize and connect your current behaviors with your inner child and understand why you get so angry and do the things the way you do and why certain things affect you the way they do, who and what triggers your reactions, actions, emotions, and so on. Once you are able to identify all of these things about yourself, then it's up to you to learn how to take responsibility for your behaviors and, most importantly, to take responsibility for your inner child as you gradually recognize his needs, wants, longings, emotional states, and so on. You would then come to a place where you understand how important it is to reparent him, yourself, in the way that you should have been parented in the first place, so that your healing journey can really take hold. You can only get to that place now by courageously facing the darkness of your past as it comes back to you, in order to recognize the true meaning of and light of your life, which is beckoning you, urging you to do what needs to be done, to face what needs to be faced, so that you can become who you were always meant to be, your true, undamaged self, to take back your power from your abuser, and to leave the shame, guilt, anger, and suffering where it belongs. It was never meant to be yours. It was imposed on you by your abuser, Not, you are not evil at all. Being angry as a result of child abuse is normal. Viktor Frankl once wrote, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior. An interesting observation, which I picked up while communicating with the broken boy, was that he often ended some of his communications with, I'm evil like that, adding a few devil emoticons. Or the really painful, serious comments he'd end off with laughing face emoticons, and admitted on one occasion, now I laugh at everything. It's also a coping mechanism. During our conversations, I let the broken boy know that I do logotherapy dream interpretation, and that if he ever had nightmares, I'd do my best to assist him in finding out the meaning message of his dreams. He immediately responded by sharing a reoccurring nightmare he'd been having around that time. So his nightmare is, I actually have a reoccurring nightmare with a lot of subtle changes all the time. The only thing that changes in this dream is the layout of the building. But I'm always in a large building with all the people I've ever known, I've ever worked with in my life. Sorry, I'm just losing my space. Although while awake, I don't remember them. I'm at the top of the building and it's home time, and I'm trying to get my daughters in the car, but I can never get to them or the car. And I can never leave the building because people and things just keep getting in the way, and things keep going wrong. Not major things, but minor irritations like the lift won't work, or I take the stairs and then the doors are locked, etc. I can see my daughters and feel danger between me and them, hence the frantic rushing to get to them all the time. Neither my wife nor my son, and this is from his second marriage, are ever present, nor is my ex-wife or family. I know that my sister is there somewhere, but I can never seem to get to her either. Mostly in some of my dreams, I eventually get really angry, and then they become violent nightmares where I will hit and break whatever is making me cross and kill and maim whoever gets in my way in my desperation to save my daughters and find my sister. I think that these violent nightmares, I'm then doing what I always wanted to do to my father. I agreed with him about that and let him know that even violent dreams can have important, healing, and guiding meaningful messages in them, and can give the dreamer direction and answers for their any struggles that they are experiencing at that particular time in their lives when they have the dream. And I told him that if he had any violent dreams, he's welcome to share them with me, and we'd work on them together to find the meaning messages of those. He continued, my therapist calls these dreams my destructive fantasies because I don't just kill them, I eviscerate them, laughing emoticons. In real life, I struggle with the rage thing too. It's not uncommon for me to throw a frying pan against a wall because an egg is sticking. I mostly get mad when things don't work out the way they're supposed to, it, or it's bottled up anger from stressing about 101 things, and I eventually explode at a small stupid thing. I always regret what I've done a millisecond after. I felt quite impressed with the broken boy for admitting to all of this and sharing openly with me. Being able to recognize and openly admit that something is not quite right in us is already half the healing battle won. The other half would require a lot more self-reflection and some really hard work, a choice that only he could make. He did say at the end of one of these heavy conversations, I'd like to think that after what I've been through growing up, I've come pretty far and done okay. I found this comment so important. How often do we focus more on all the negatives of a person's behavior and less on how far they've come or how hard they're trying under the most difficult of circumstances in the aftermath of child abuse? The broken boy wrote, with the minor irritations, they are minor to the world, but they are never minor to me. It always seems like the end of the world when those small things go wrong, and not just in my dreams, also always when I'm awake. Last week, 3 bunnies escaped for the 3rd time. There was hardly a second before I was trying to impale one with a garden fork. I wanted it dead, eviscerated, gone, destroyed. Only after I had my spat did I realize how childish that was. I was throwing an adult tantrum, laughing emoticons. Anger is the main issue I'm working on in therapy. The therapist attributes it to fear, of which I have too much fear. I fear everything. I fear change, what people think of me. I stay out of social circles for fear of ridicule, etc. That's why I only like being with my wife. She uplifts me all the time. Whereas my ex was a female version of my father. She was always putting me down and shouting at me. It's not uncommon to walk in on me, silently shouting at myself and answering like there's 2 people inside of me, laughing face emoticons. Sometimes I just want my inner child to die so I can start over. I responded, maybe because your inner child represents your weaknesses, fears, anger, pain, etc. It might scare you on a subconscious level to allow yourself to connect with those emotions while you're struggling so hard just to stay strong enough to get through each day. This is where your adult courage is required so that you can reach him along with all his brokenness in order to help him to heal and integrate with you more wholly for the sake of your adult self. As much as your adult self is you, so is that broken boy child still locked up inside you. And only you can reach inside to hold him close to your heart and set him free. Your inner child is supposed to be nurtured back to health, peace, and freedom. He is meant to be the carefree, playful, and creative part of yourself that is currently being denied his vital part in you. Healing will help to integrate your fragmented parts into a more whole and healthier, happier you. I believe in you, and I'm here for you. Until the broken boy is able to objectify his experience, to truly remember and acknowledge the awful extent of what happened to him in his past, he will not have enough information for his adult self to work with in a logical, conscious, and self-accepting way. A person cannot just fix anything which they have not yet fully faced, realized, grasped, and understood. And nobody can fix us. That's why I get so mad at people who say things like forgive and forget or let it go. For goodness sake, let what go? I believe that these convenient phrases are used by those who don't understand or don't want to face or understand what makes them feel uncomfortable when they are faced with another person's struggle. If we can just get the one who is making us feel uncomfortable to forgive and forget and let it go, then we won't have to deal with their problem anymore. Such an easy fix. Some history around the time the broken boy of the broken boy's dream. I only had this dream after the divorce and after my oldest daughter passed away at around 12 years of age, if I remember right. I think the dream also relates to my ex moving all over the show and not being able to track them, see them, or talk to them. There was a time when I thought there was no God. Before my daughter passed away, I was desperately trying to find her and my other daughter. She had cancer, as you know, and I desperately wanted to be there for her. But it was only after she passed away that I started having those dreams. And it was always a different scenario. It would be in a complex or mall or church or anywhere else, but they were always 2 or 3 steps ahead of me, and I just couldn't reach them. Before the loss of my daughter, my second daughter called me from from a neighbor's phone because my oldest daughter told her to tell the neighbor to phone me. The girls knew how desperately ill my oldest daughter was, and they really wanted to see me. So the neighbor phoned me and said, "Listen, you must come and see your daughter because she is close to death." And I thought, geez, the last time I saw her, she was walking. She looked fine. She was healthy. Now, all of a sudden, this. My bosses said, take all the time you need. So I went home. I didn't have money and I didn't have a car to drive there. So my wife, his second wife, posted on her Facebook. And by the next morning, we had all our tickets paid for and we had 36,000 in our account. So I could pay for the funeral, cremation, everything, and we could go down for 2 weeks and live, you know. So, yeah, I got to see her for 3 days. Those 3 days, I cried it out already. Sure. After the third day, when they told me she had died, I felt more relieved than anything else because I knew she wanted to go, and I just wanted her to go by then as well because she had been suffering horribly. A few weeks later, I started having the dreams. I'd have them every week, and they were like extremely vivid. It was such an adrenaline rush dream. I'm always trying to find or catch them, but I never can. They're unaware that I'm there trying to reach them. So the conclusions that the broken boy and I came to together as we worked through his dream, using logotherapy dream interpretation. The large building. Together, we decided that the large building refers to something that he was currently experiencing that was too overwhelming and too big for him to cope with, an extreme sense of hopelessness in the situation he was in. Home time. He was desperately desiring for his struggle to be over, to go home and rest from his troubles, to rest from his emotional turmoil over having been separated for too long from his girls, hoping longing for a true sense of peace, trying to get to daughter one and daughter two and get them into the car, but I can never get to them or the car. Even though his oldest daughter had already passed away by the time he started this dream, he was still struggling emotionally with a deep longing need as a loving father to have his children back in his life with him, to at least be able to reach them, hold them, and to speak to them again, to freely love and protect them as he once needed to be loved and protected. He had a sense of absolute hopelessness in not being able to achieve this, the same kind of hopelessness he must have felt many times as a child when all his needs were being ignored, withdrawn, taken away, and deprived. That also in the dream, I can never leave the building because people and things keep getting in the way and going wrong. From this, we agreed that his divorce experience and being separated from his children felt like a deeply painful struggle that he realized couldn't easily be solved at the time, a battle that he just couldn't win due to all the obstacles and complications he had already had to face along the way. It all seemed to be to be so much bigger than him. Large building, sense of no escape from it at all, no solution or end to his anguish. His struggles with his ex-wife denying him access to his children and making it impossible for him to find them must surely have triggered emotional memories from his childhood, that no matter what he tried, be it love or anger, conforming or rebellion, speaking up or silence, he just couldn't win during his childhood. And the same scenario was now playing out in his adulthood, a seemingly hopeless, completely hopeless situation. I could only begin to imagine how much this must have messed with his head as a man, with his inner child emotions surfacing throughout. The same kind of desperate frustrations, raw fears, deep anger, abject loneliness, and helplessness. When he talks about the minor irritations again, the lift won't work. And when he takes the stairs, he finds the doors locked, faulty elevators, not being able to get to his children or the car, etc. He said minor irritations, yet he kind of contradicted that statement later in our conversation by saying the minor irritations could throw him into a rage. I got what he meant, though, that small things can trigger his rage, which he experiences even in some of his dreams that sometimes turn to violent nightmares. We discussed how his adult self, we discussed how to his adult self, some things may seem minor, but to his little self, they are huge and triggered frustrations that rise up as dark and foreboding flashback emotions from his
Wow.
childhood past. We also discussed that when he uses the word minor, it could also mean that what he might be saying is that he mostly learned to survive and push through these irritations, not acknowledging how major they actually are in connection with his past, trying to ignore them as much as he possibly can, because he is aware that when he doesn't ignore them, he explodes. I just hit or break whatever is making me cross, he said. So is it possible, I said to him, that you are actually, in the best way you know how, consciously or even subconsciously, working at making morally correct choices in your life, maybe for the sake of those that you love, working at taking responsibility for your actions and for those around you, to try your best to remain calm when you feel these irritations are triggering you. Admittedly, you don't always succeed, but while you are at least becoming more self-aware and trying to do the right thing, this shows your true spirit constantly finding a way to shine through all those heavy and dark layers of pain and struggle from your past. The severe abuses you suffered has not succeeded in completely destroying your true essence. You still have a grip on what is good, beautiful, right, healing, and true. You are not a lost boy or irreparably broken or evil. Your cruel abuser has not succeeded in completely destroying you, and he never will. I'm so proud of you for coming this far under such dreadful odds. In his dream, he said, neither my wife nor my son from his or my son from his second marriage are ever present. Neither is my ex-wife or family. We discussed that perhaps they were not meant to be in this dream. This dream is about him and his personal struggle with being separated so cruelly and painfully from his children. He said, my sister is there, but I can never seem to get to her either. We talked about how having his children separated from him and not being able to protect them could have triggered emotional memories of how desperately he had always tried to protect his sister from their monster, and how helpless he felt back then. Past emotions that now in his adulthood felt so much the same as he was feeling after his divorce and separation from his girls. How helpless he must have felt as a child, trying to protect his sister, not always succeeding, and now as an adult, feeling just as desperately helpless in being there for and protecting his children during his separation from them. It occurred to me that this dream was definitely highlighting the broken boy's undealt with childhood struggles. On his frantic search for his girls in order to protect them from danger in his dream, I responded, there is no doubt in my mind that you loved and still love your girls very much. You must have feared for them greatly and had no way to save them from the danger you perceived that they were in. Your anguish must have been so searing and agonizing to bear. Such love must nullify any notion that you are evil, because evil just can't live in the same place as love. How many times were you told you were bad and made to feel like an evil child by your father? He did his best to burn that message into your soul with his cruel, abusive actions towards you. Just a moment, sorry. You adopted that message and now sometimes even label yourself with it. But your obvious love for your 4 children and your second wife proves to me that this disgusting lie should not be carried by you any longer. Yes, you have some healing work to do, but it's in no ways are you supposed to allow his evil cruelty on you to remain with you anymore. You have to find a way to take your own power back. In the dream, he talks about the car, and we decided that's just desperately wanting to get to his children, maybe even take them far away from the danger he perceived. He didn't have a car at the time that of his daughter's passing. In the dream, he talks about the people I worked with. In the dream, the people almost have blank faces. They don't smile or talk. They are just there walking around aimlessly. I asked him, now why on earth the people you worked with even in the dream in the first place? Could there have been a part of you that wished you could share your story with them? Wish they would understand you better and know you better? You were at work surrounded by people, yet probably feeling very alone with your struggle, alone in the crowd. Or did you maybe feel comforted with them around? Like maybe if they knew your story, they would help you or be there for you. But perhaps you chose to keep them distant to your personal life. That's all I can think of. Any ideas from your side, I asked? Not all the questions to have to be answered by the dreamer. They were just asked to give him ideas to think about, to answer the whys and wherefores of his dream for himself. He did respond, though, saying he was more of a loner, didn't like getting too close to people, and in general didn't like anyone he ever worked with. But he thinks that's because the IT work itself wasn't meaningful to him. He hated the work which his father guided him into because it's what his father liked and thought would be best for him. I did ask him what emotions he was experiencing in his dream, and he responded, always frantic, dreadful, desperate, not fearful, more irritated. Nothing seemed to want to go my way. I'm not avoiding anyone. They are background noise. I'm always rushing and running and can always see, but can never reach my children or reach my sister with my calls. They will not hear me. I urgently want to tell my sister something, but I can never reach her. I'm just always looking for her and wanting to warn her, but never get to her or my children. I know it's something urgent I want to tell my sister, but I don't know what it is. I can't find her or see her either. I'm just always looking for her. I responded, perhaps in your dream you were wanting to warn her of the danger she was in. I'm sure maybe to tell her to hide, find a way to protect herself from your father. This again highlights your innate capacity to love and for love and compassion, and even more so, I believe, the empathy that you do not recognize in yourself. It is there, just blocked by the trauma you experienced as a child. When the broken boy told me about owning up to things his sister did and taking the punishments for her to avoid her getting a beating, which he said he did all the time for her, I shared with him how I'd done exactly the same thing for my younger sister and how she had even done that for me at times. At times when she knew that I couldn't take any more of the punishments. I said to him, when you chose to protect your sister, you chose the higher way, the spiritually human way, the way that separates us as spiritual human beings from mere animal existence. And you were only a child when you chose to take the punishments for her. Something great inside of you made that decision for the sake of your sister. You may have been small, but you were by no means weak-spirited. The divine power of your human spirit helped you to, even then, in the midst of your own extreme suffering, to stand up for your sister in the only way you knew how, even if it meant that you had to suffer more as a result. Does she know that you did this for her, I wonder? When a seriously hurting child, or anybody for that matter, is able to reach outside of himself towards another for the sake of another, then that is evidence of his humanity and his great spiritual capacity. Another a person might make destructive choices to become more animalistic, such as your abuser did. He lost his human face, but it's important to know that one's spiritual capacity remains whole and can never be damaged. It can only be blocked by one's psychological or physically negative choices that override and deny their spiritual dimension. In his dream, he said, "I'm at the top of the building." He's always at the top. This, we agreed, pointed towards the meaning message of his dream. I gather from this that you always start at the top of the buildings you're in your nightmares. I'm at the top. This shows to me, once again, your spiritual capacity and potential to rise above your struggles and to see them for what they are. You did not start out in a dungeon at the bottom of the building, clawing your way out from the weight of and the dirt of your abused past. You were never meant to be on the bottom, as your abuser made you believe you were, like you were nothing more than a piece of rubbish to be trodden underfoot by the beast. I believe that the meaning message of your dream is to stay on top. It's calling you to stay on top of your struggles now. You cannot go back and change a single thing. Everything that is past has brought you to where you are today in this moment in time. From the top, you are able to see everything in greater perspective. You are able to make more sense of everything that has happened before and everything that is now. And depending on your focus from the top, you should be able to see the horizon and the beautiful sunsets and sunrises instead of seeing only the darkness. From the top, you should be able to have more positive and hopeful dreams and be able to envisage a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling future. The broken boy has found a beautiful and loving wife who has been able to see right through all of his bad behaviors and negative ways, to connect with his true essence, not pandering to the negatives, but instead focusing and magnifying all that she sees that is good in him. Because of her unconditional love, he has been able to feel loved and accepted, worthy, and as somebody in this world, as somebody to his wife and his children. Today, he is able to face and bravely acknowledge that he is still struggling, and he is trying hard to find his way to his healing and peace of mind, and not only for his own sake, but for the sake of his family also. To end my presentation, I wanted to say how easy it is for us to focus on the negatives of someone like the broken boy and label them as difficult or misfits or evil or even narcissistic, like this man's father undeniably was towards him when he was just a helpless little boy. Just because they make us feel uncomfortable or seem hard to love, we reject them, turn our backs on them, isolate them, as they isolate themselves to protect themselves from our hurtful glares and negative judgments. How many other lost and broken boys and girls out there in our world are silently screaming for all that was denied and stripped from them in their childhood?
Wow.
Invisible sufferers, voiceless, faceless, nameless, bruised and broken children, their silenced screams unheard, longing, lonely, aching, forever trapped in the tragic time warp of abuse. Are they to remain lost and invisible forever? Can you see them? Can you hear them? Do you care? Thank you for listening.
Oh, wow. Pan. This is the most brilliant, beautiful exposition and such a powerful demonstration of another way of looking at what Frankel said, that logotherapy is an education towards responsibility. you give it a different tone. Logotherapy is a encouragement, an invitation, an elaboration of what is calling you from the top to rise to that level and then look at your problems in this kind of way that can actually separate the wheat from the tares, the ugly things from what was good. And the what was good is what the evil had suppressed, and it tried to trample underfoot. And it's bringing out that magnificent will to meaning, that unscathed human being, at the very essence of the broken man's life, or anybody's life, any client that is suffering. So logotherapy is a call to transformation in becoming what you actually are and are meant to be. Wow, I find this stunning, and I want you to submit that just as is to a logotherapy journal. It's so descriptive. Any other comments before we go into some details? Wow. Well, let me just start our thought processes by giving you what was my prime impression of this dream. And remember that Pan gave it in the backdrop of what is happening to him now, that he is asking her to remember him. That, in a so-called reconciliation with his father, which is so unreal, that actually this dream is a focus in on the primary source of realness to him. And that was the compassion for children that he couldn't keep. And like Pan said, the connection to that innocent child of his boyhood, that he is so struggling to find. But it's like a strong meaning focus right now, while he is in a very unreal situation, which is a what? A forgiveness of his father. Now, we come to a very challenging reality, that there are some things that are unforgivable, beyond the pale, that can never be redeemed and never be reconciled with. And that is what he's struggling to admit to himself. You know, why the little things that, like Pan so brilliantly illuminated, was very big as a child, that can now in his adulthood trigger such a rage, a protest against evil, that said, you should never have been. And his father is evil. Finish and claw. Full stop. There's no way, and any way that tries to push him in the way of forgiveness, of forgiving and forgetting, is cowardly. Exactly what you said, Pan, that it's because people can't bear to really think that deeply, to really be that brave, to stand up against evil and say, no. we'd rather appease evil. We'd rather kind of excuse it, compromise with it. But please don't confront us with this kind of courage that we're being asked to take as human beings. What a powerful, powerful story, but very much now in a setting where he's being pushed into a wrong corner, Pan. And I don't know who did the pushing, but boy, he cannot take it. You know what it does? Like he said, it obliterates who he is. It totally obliterates it. You know, I had this experience with Holocaust survivors of people that said, you should forgive and forget. That obliterates their suffering and what they went through and what they realized. And this was it, that they all said what was done to us was unforgivable. And everyone that tries to soften it by saying, oh, it can be forgiven, is actually afraid to take that final stand, which is the defiant power of the human spirit. Wow. You remembered him, Pan. He asked you to remember him. You remembered him. And you reminded him of what he went through. And you actually affirmed his right to have felt angry. And you know, an anger that is not acknowledged, that is pushed under, it hasn't got the boundaries. It then bursts out into what you have said is an adult temper tantrum. But that's not to be judged if you see it in context. If you see a child's frustration in having a temper tantrum in context, please, had my say. I'd like to hear what other people think or have picked up or are quizzical about.
Hello, everybody. Thank you again, Pan, for absolutely heart-wrenching account. I would just like to say something about forgiveness. And I know this sounds off the wall, but I think the forgiveness, and Viktor Frankl spoke about that, and he said that the one wonderful thing about logotherapy is that one can use it in conjunction with any religion. And I think this is a big thing. In many religions, I'm sorry, the weather is crazy here if you hear some interruptions there. In most religions, there are some codes that we are told or asked to obey. And this can bring a problematic situation in terms of this idea of forgiveness. And I really think that what Frankl said and how he explained how he spoke to the rabbi whose wife died and he couldn't come to terms with it, and all the various different things that he wrote, that this forgiveness is not about forgiving the perpetrator at all, in my opinion. I think it is about forgiving yourself for being so blindsided that you didn't see what was happening. But you can't, because you're just a child or you're an innocent victim or you haven't got enough information. So in this point, if one can forgive yourself, already a big obstacle is then being overcome, because this is like self-guilt, which is part of that triangle of death, one would say. Blaming, shaming yourself all the time. And in many modern therapies of psychology, one would find that they're always looking for, and especially that so-called buyer's remorse, if you know what I mean. So always putting the blame back on the poor victim. And I think this is the thing, that this victim, you as a victim, you can never say, but I caused myself to be a victim. What utter quatsch. I mean, this is honestly what has been put on us also in legal systems. It is frightening, but it is this idea of being able to forgive yourself for not seeing what was happening and understanding that whatever way you reacted, it was caused by the situation, and you just did the best you could with what you had, especially being a small child. And I do think that the self-forgiveness is where it could start in terms of this whole construct of forgiveness.
Brilliant, Martha. Brilliant, brilliant. Absolutely so. Because this is exactly what we do in logotherapy and what Pan has done. She brought out that unscathed human spirit, that purity of childhood innocence, and restored it in a context of forgiveness. That she explained why he was feeling so bad, why he saw himself as evil. Nobody can live with such a thought that you're evil, not if your spirit is still unscathed. And to bring out the real person in that struggle, because struggle for love and acceptance and a feeling of dignity and self-worth. This is the kind of forgiveness that is actually the healing in logotherapy. That you forgive yourself for what other people would say. Oh, that was horrible. What you did was terrible. This temper tantrum of yours, it can't be tolerated. We don't listen to what is happening behind that so-called bad behavior. Wonderful, Martha. Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I also want to relate to what you're saying behind that behavior. First of all, I want to thank you incredibly, Pan. Just like what Teria said, it was a terrific and such powerful presentation. It is really stunning. I want to relate to a comment that you made in speaking to him when you said even violence can be a positive sign or something like that, you said to him. Because, I stayed with your last comments, kind of calling to us, to the whole world, to listen to this silent screaming, which is really, really so terrible. I once told Teria that in Hebrew there is a book called The Violence of Being Silenced. The Violence of Being Silenced, which is a play of words on the same words. Maybe I saw Batya entered Alimut Ha'elem, so it's the same. The violence of being, you can say, violently silenced. And so when you said to him, also violence can be actually a good sign, a positive sign, maybe you want to say towards healing, I see it indeed a path of healing, even though his behavior now is all these outbursts of violence. It's better than if he would have fallen into a deep depression because of suppressing that terrible anger. So at least it comes out now in all kinds of ways in his behavior and also in his dreams, but it's a positive sign of the birth of his voice that has been silenced, that you ended your presentation with saying being voiceless, being nameless, and all that. That is so terrible. It kills my ears to hear that. This this how did you say, silent screaming. It is terrible. So at least with him, it is not anymore a silent screaming, but he is expressing his anger, and he has to still decipher it more, of course, and he still has a lot of work to do. But I think I so agree with you that you said to him, even violence can be a positive sign. It's a very deep insight.
Yeah, yeah, indeed.
I like what you're saying. What I actually meant was that if you have a violent dream, there's
Yeah,
always a meaning. Yeah, there's a
also.
meaning message in that.
Uh-huh.
It'll give you an answer and
Uh-huh.
to how to move forward or how to heal or whatever.
Yeah,
But yes, what you're saying is very true. He has got a voice, but it's how the world reacts to him when when he's doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
And they can keep him there by reacting in the wrong way. They can
yeah,
keep him stuck in that place.
yeah,
But with his wife, for instance, coming to him afterwards and saying, I don't like what you've just done. But and making him face what he's done, but at the same time loving him, accepting him still.
mm,
That's where the healing comes, and that's what the world needs to do to help these people. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I actually meant both in the dream as well, in the
Yes, yeah,
dreams, as well as
yeah,
in his behavior, that it's a
yeah,
good positive
yeah,
sign. And
yes.
it's like Ryall was saying, it's a sign of the defiant power in him, that he no longer wants to shut up
That's
to
it.
mm,
everything that has happened.
Yeah.
yeah. And it makes me think of the dream in terms of it being inside this building. It's clearly a trapped situation. He's trying to understand, and he's at the top. But look at his frustrations. I'm getting out of the building. The lifts don't work, or down the stairs, the doors are locked, and he can't get to his children. So it's such a description of this tremendous will to break free, to be able to embrace and be with his children that he, in a sense, had been robbed of by an abusive figure, his first wife, that actually forbade him to see the children, that kept the children away from him. It's that agony, that his own goodness, that he's wanting to love and wanting to reach out and embrace and experience his own goodness and be free to do so, is still trapped. He's still dreaming a dream of being inside that building. And like Adida said, and like you yourself said, there is still a journey of healing to go on. Beyond this, especially now in this dreadful situation of being pushed into a very unreal situation that actually flies in the face of what he's looking for, which is to acknowledge that he had a right to be angry with his father. He had a right now to reject him out of his life for what he did, and concentrate on what he was deprived of. Why is he, look in the dream, he's looking for his sister. He's all the time looking for his sister in his boyhood. That was his link, like you had the link to your sister. You clung onto each other for love and protection, because you didn't get it from the outside. And he still can't find his sister. All right. So he's still telling us, I'm not free from this confinement, from this building. I can't get out of it. I want to get out of it. I'm trying to understand how to get out of it. And your affirmations are so powerful, but Pan, they still have to penetrate, and he has to hear them again and again. And like he has to have his wife with him through thick and thin, but he's not free yet. And it's so, it really grips one's heart. It really, really does. With compassion. Yeah. And isn't that, this is what we spoke about last time when we met and considered his story. And I think it was you, Martha, or was it Jean, that asked, what do you do as a therapist when you're confronted with such evil in what your client is busy recalling at what had been done to him or her? You're raging inside, you're raging. You break down in tears in empathy, but it's like you want to shout out to heaven at the injustice of it. And it actually, like we spoke about last time, that when answering, what do you do as a therapist when you're confronted with such evil that your client had experienced, and how you said, yes, you're almost sick the next day yourself. It's to take recourse into what is good and healthy and wonderful and uplifting, to strengthen yourself in a belief in that goodness. And in fact, this is what happens, that if we really have the courage to confront what is wrong, like Frankl said, suffering makes us aware of what ought not to be. And it's in the very face of that Frankl experienced the defiant power of the human spirit. Like that Holocaust survivor said, Hitler could turn us into a heap of dead bodies, but he could not get at us. My word, that's overcoming evil with a triumph of goodness, so that one becomes even more refined and passionate about what is good when you have the courage to confront evil, to confront it, not to make peace with it, not to forgive it, but to confront it. Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, it's almost time. Is there somebody else that wanted? This was.
I would like to add something
Please,
about
Daniela.
forgiveness, because my definition for forgiveness might be a little different.
Okay.
I do say that forgiveness is possible in the meaning of I don't seek for revenge.
Yeah.
I let go. It doesn't mean that guilt is not guilt. It's just about me. I let go. And I leave it to God or whatever you believe in.
Yeah.
So for me, forgiveness is possible and it's very, very powerful. But forgiveness doesn't mean that the consequences of guilt are washed away. That's not possible.
No.
So the consequences stay. Like this boy has this little boys inside, the raging boy, the victim boy, the crying boy, whatever. They stay. And there's one wonderful way how he can help these boys, these little children inside.
Yeah.
He himself is very, very safe on the noetic dimension. This is a place where nothing can happen anymore. So this is what I do with my clients. And I tell them, go to the noetic dimension. You are safe there. And then ask your inner children to come into the body and experience it's over. And that works very good.
I'm so glad you mentioned this, Danila. It's most important part of what we understand by true forgiveness. Because Frankl made very, very clear that our confrontation with evil is not by becoming belligerent and aggressive ourselves. It's something far more masterful and holy. Can I just mention what's happening in Israel today?
Yeah.
We are eliminating by very precision directed intelligence to kill off these awful evildoers that suppress their own people and use them as human shields, and actually I don't want to go into it, but I just wanted to make this point that there is a true stand against evil is never a revengeful stand. It is in an ordinary sense of the word with us in our own relationships. You let go of people. You don't try and harm them. You let go of them and you leave the vengeance to God. That's true. But God's vengeance can work in a very holy stand against evil. And this is something that we find very difficult to conceive. But the Bible talks about Israel in the end days. I'll make you a sharp threshing instrument that threshes to the right and to the left. Now, that kind of actual taking a stand against, which the world did in making war against Hitler. They didn't just let him go. So this is still a higher understanding of a stand against evil that has got nothing to do with belligerent revenge, like Frankel said to the inmate that came out of the camp and stomped through the flowers and said, we have a right to do this. That's not what it is about at all. You do, then Frankel said, you know better than your perpetrators. No, it's an absolute separation from in yourself. Against and this forgiveness of yourself to regain that kind of dignity and purity that you not only speak the truth, but you could actually go into action against what is evil in a holy way, because you're protecting and you're standing up for. And so, listen, this is a big conversation that we can go on in future sessions, but I think our time is up. But thank you. Every comment that was made was legitimate and real and to the point. And I admire you all for that. And Pan, I'm in awe of you. I really am. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Me too, Pam.
Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night. Thank you, Daniela.